another live global transmission against tyranny. I'm Alex Jones, your host. We're going to be live here for the next 3 hours. And we are going to have open phones because when we have open phones, so many news items, so many issues, so many questions, so many comments get raised that I would never bring up and that my guests would not bring up. And the intel we get, the local news articles that you point out to us, every time we take calls, we end up going and finding and writing a bigger article about it, and a lot of times it becomes national news. There is a globalist tactic I've seen over and over again of compartmentalizing news around the country and around the world where you never see how there's a congruent global standardization going on. And you never hear about the really incredible police state stuff. I mean, when there's a TSA, Army, Marine Corps, Air Force checkpoint in Texas or Iowa or Tennessee or Florida, and it's on the local news, we take that, break down how it connects to other parts of the world and our own country, give people historical analysis and context to understand this is part of a larger takeover, and to illustrate how it's another incredible signpost on the road to tyranny. That's just one microcosm example. But obviously, huge developments on the Iran front. Jerusalem Post reports Obama advisor, ex-advisor Obama ready to strike to stop Iran. Israel preparing for nuclear Iran, French news agency. We've got big economic news. And something that's been out for a few weeks, or really about a month. I covered it briefly at the time, and because we've already warned about situations like this so much, I dropped the ball. Because I have that blind spot when I've already reported on something ad infinitum for years, and then it just confirms what I'm saying. I tend to not cover it right at the point everything I'm warning you about is confirmed. And this is the top threat. So I'm going to cover this coming up in the second hour after we take your calls. In fact, will you print me Australian scientist releases mouse pox formula? Because that's going to tie into this. That's from about 5 years ago. Thank you. Because I saw it in my stack right before I went live, an article I hadn't seen myself this morning that they'd printed off for me. And so I had them print some more of these from a few weeks ago, from back on December 20th. Here's one of them. U.S. blocks publication of research on highly contagious bird flu strain. But that's not really what they did. When you read the fine print, the government funded the university to make an airborne super flu that kills almost everyone it comes in contact with. Now, that's nothing compared to the mouse pox that you can be cheaply made by any even mid-level, level 2 type lab, a couple $100,000, you can do it. The mouse pox can be changed for rabbits, goats, humans, chimpanzees, mice, anything you want. And it kills 99% of those that come in contact with it. You're talking about I guess we're 7.2 billion roughly, because usually those censuses are about 2 years behind. The Earth's clearly over 7 billion. They made a big hoopla last year. We passed the 7 billion. It's probably 100 million or more, maybe even 200 million above that. Let's just say it's 7 billion. 99% of 7 billion, you're talking about a few million people left. In fact, during the break, we'll pull up that actual number. You know what? This is a lot scarier than men in turbans, that you've got a better chance of being killed by honeybees or hitting your head or champagne corks. Now, you do have a better chance of being killed by Alciaada than great white shark. There's, what, 1 death in North America every year from great whitey, 5 or 6 worldwide. Big show lined up today. We'll cover the Doomsday scenario. Here we are, the front lines in the info war, the tip of the spear. It is an info war, hence Infowars.com, as we wage war on corruption, as we crash through the globalist lies and disinformation. We are going to be here for the next 3 hours today, and we are going to have open phones throughout the entire 3 hours on any news item, any issue, any comment, any question. You agree, you disagree, you've got a local news story, we're going to go to you. All I ask is that you be ready when you are put on air and make your point, because if I'm going to take a lot of calls, which is always very interesting and informative, the different angles and wild card directions you take us in, you need to be ready so I can move to the next person. In fact, I'm just going to give the number out now before I even get to the news. We've got the New Hampshire primary today. We've got the media ganging up on Ron Paul and then spinning it and saying your constituents or your supporters are mad you didn't talk to them when the media runs Paul out of the restaurant. You got Paul kind of getting mad at her. That's interesting. You've got the media, CBS and others, not even showing Ron Paul in second place, closing on Mitt Romney. You've got national polls out that most conservatives find Romney acceptable. That's like people that liked Obama because they thought of him as better than Bush. You know, we've had 8 years of Bush, give us a Democrat. It's bought and paid for by the same people. I mean, it'd be like if you bought a used car that blew up on you a month after you bought it and they lied to you and it turned out it had been in a flood and had bad parts on it. Would you go back to the very same dealership? And they're like, but this is a blue car, not a red car. Or this is a yellow car, not a green car. I mean, would you trust them again? And then you know what Romney stands for, what he actually votes for. Obamacare that he wrote, open borders, carbon taxes, Al Gore loving, abortion. Oh, he was in the debates. He's all against abortion. I mean, it's worse that he's so duplicitous. If he was just for abortion, I'd respect him more than saying he's not for it, but then he supported it. I mean, he is not even a flip-flopper. He's like a weather vane. You know, up on the top of your house, whichever way the wind blows, that's the way it points. And then there's the guy who is called pig-headed, called Dr. No, never compromises, stands with the Constitution, follows it with a absolute devotion, a purist. We've gotten pure New World Order, pure sellout, pure flip-flopping, pure corruption. So we don't want what made America great. No, we don't want Ron Paul because, you know what? CBS News doesn't show him in second place, and so he doesn't exist because the mind controllers say so. And we've got all this news on Iran that I'm going to get to in the next hour. I'm not even going to cover it till the next hour. I've got all this financial news. Greek parents too poor to care for their children are turning them into the government, which itself is going bankrupt. We've got those reports. We've got another article out of the New York Times and Village Voice. Federal agents help major drug traffickers move millions in cash. Oh, I'm glad after the Chicago Tribune, El Paso Times, and before that, PrisonPlanet.com and Infowars.com. You know, the reporters that broke this have a name. It's Paul Watson, Curtin M.O., Steve Watson. Back in February of last year, it was in the federal court cases where drug dealers were being released or cops that didn't know what was going on had busted them, and they're in federal court, and they declare, I work for the U.S. government, national security. Here's the documents. Here's my lawyer. And the feds come into court and say, yes, it's true. We declare national security. I mean, that's in these federal court cases with Sinaloa, drug cartel, and others. I mean, you think the major banks get caught laundering $370+ billion in a 2-year period, just Wells Fargo and Wachovia alone, and government wasn't involved? You really think a crack house with some starving kids living in it in dirty diapers is laundering the $500 bill a year that comes in? Oh, no, the government's not involved in $500 billion. No, it's hidden under a cabbage patch. It's hidden under a toadstool. It's, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. The government's not involved. There's a Santa Claus / Easter Bunny / Keebler elf creature that sits on toadstools, and then eggs pop up underneath it, and that's where the drug gangs keep the money and launder it. Now, that's you know, because if you don't believe in Keebler elf, Easter Bunny, Santa Claus creatures that lay golden eggs that the money's in, you're a conspiracy theorist. I mean, when the mega banks are caught doing all of this, you're not supposed to look at it. You're not supposed to know about it. When the cop pulls you over and wants to search your car for drugs, you're supposed to get all scared and say, okay, go ahead, violate my Fourth Amendment. Because I randomly might have some products your boss has shipped in. I mean, cops pull me over, I pull up to a checkpoint, that's happened before, and they want to search my car. I start laughing at them. When they laugh at me, I laugh right back. I mean, it's a joke. You know the government deals the drugs, I say to the cops, and they never deny it. They just go, well, that's not my job. No, your job is to violate the law, the Constitution, and treat me like I'm a criminal, that I might have some products your boss has brought in. All right, I'm already ranting. And I'm going to stop right there. When I come back from break, I'm going to your calls. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231, 1-800-259-9231. And we could talk about the whole cornucopia. Open announcements of internet censorship they're announcing. Headline, Homeland Security monitors journalists, all journalists. They monitor preachers, everybody. It's not about Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda works for them on record. Who'd they give Libya control of? Don't you ever call me a conspiracy theorist. Don't you ever demonize Ron Paul and run national TV ads, Huntsman, who works for Obama publicly, saying he's a conspiracy theorist because he says Israel founded Hamas. It's in the Jerusalem Post. It's in AP. Just because we're informed doesn't make us bad. Just because we know what we're talking about doesn't make us evil. Just because we have our wits and our minds and our intellects and are into the real world, not football scores and can Tebow win again and your male soap operas. They were all asking the presidential candidates on the debate I watched Saturday night from New Hampshire what they do, and it was all, I watch football. And the crowd's like, oh, yes. And Ron Paul said, well, I spend it with my family. But after they go to bed, I read an economics textbook. And that's what he does. Because learning how the universe works, learning how systems work, every time you study a system, it leads back to dirty little globalists scamming everybody. And it's like ridiculous how their scams work. They're so obvious once you're informed. You try to go to the public and say, hey, I want to tell you about this scam. They're like, the Federal Reserve is federal. It took us decades to get the sheeple out there to at least admit that. And now we're going to wake everybody else up about the other issues. I mean, every day there's articles in the, quote, dinosaur mainstream corporate whore media about Alex Jones is insane. He believes they're setting up a world government run by big banks and that their ultimate goal is population reduction. And then I see the comments on CBS, ABC, just you name it, and every comment, almost everyone is like, here's the documents, Rockefeller Foundation, it's all true. It's in the bisphenol A, warn everybody, cancer's way up. I used to think he was nuts too, I apologize. Alex is right. Look at this over here. People have discovered, I'm not making any of this up. When I tell you they've got thousands of labs in the U.S. alone developing every airborne version of weapons that will kill at 90+% with the airborne Ebola. It's got about 96%. Mousepox, 99% of humans dead, airborne, total death. Super bird flu, 95% or more, dead. I'm going to give you all the numbers next hour after I take calls. And they've got weaponized flu, and they've got at University of Texas at Galveston, level 4 bioweapon lab and a number 2 lab. And they've got crazy professors publicly saying, the time is coming, soon me and my family will die. It's sad, but it's for the earth. The airborne is coming. It's good. And then standing ovations as he's given the highest scientific award in Texas, Dr. Pianka a few years ago, and the reporters that taped it. It's just the entire, 1,000+ people in attendance, all the top scientists of Texas. He's got international awards when he projected red skulls on the wall and said the mass death is coming. They stood for a minute and began to weep. Oh, yes, oh, the mass death is coming. I'm not supposed to be concerned about that. You ever seen 12 Monkeys? I'm not supposed to be worried about any of this. No, I'm supposed to literally hide under my table because they say there's 100 Al-Qaeda in all of Central Asia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and most of them have pedigrees on record being trained and recruited by the CIA, British intel, and Israeli intel. I mean, this is all just facts. I'm I'm supposed to give up my entire Bill of Rights and Constitution and let a pot-bellied pervert grab my genitals and fondle my children and fondle my wife because I'm going to be safe?